All right, so I am live, and I am going to get this URL out because got things messed up. Okay. And let's see how this goes. Going to get this posted out, and let's see what people say. Communication, there we go. Let's see here. Let me get my streaming chat going here. Got that over there. Get this over here. It's probably going to be a couple of minutes to get people on because I had to change the URL last second. So I'll log in and update everybody as to what's going on. So I am here in San Antonio. And y'all hear me? Let's see here. I think, let's see here. Get that closer. I think I have it all set up right. How are things? Okay, cool. Yeah, y'all can hear me. How are things at Dreaminoids? Things in SA are crazy but good. So sweet, y'all can hear me. Okay, so what happened is I forgot that when you set this up ahead of time, if you set it up for live streaming, you have to use like OBS or some kind of software. And I had just planned on using my webcam, right? So there's a whole other interface for if you just use your webcam. So I had to like set up a whole nother thing. So now I've got to email and let everybody know. But I'm glad y'all are on and watching me. So why don't y'all ask me a question and I'll answer it while I ping everybody else out there and let them know that my live stream is at this link. So what's y'all's first question? It can be anything. Let's see here. Okay. Well, then I'll just pick on who's chatting so far. So I see James is online. And oh, do you have to pay to do live chat on your live stream? That is a really good question. So here's something I learned as I went to go do this, is that you don't have to pay, but you can only do it on your laptop if for free. If you want to do it on your mobile, then you have to have 1,000 subscribers. And I was like, whoa, okay. That's interesting, because I planned on doing it with my mobile, and then it turned out like, nope, can't do it with your mobile. You have to do it with your desktop. So, anyways, let's see here. Let's get this. What's your next question? I did hook up an external webcam as well. So this is like a 1080p Logitech webcam. Do you set your goals for personal side projects? For instance, hope to gain a following, turn into a business, get side gigs. That's a good question. One of the things I've always thought about with my life is that, like, if this is art, let me make sure I'm in frame here. If this is art and this is business, I've always tried to maintain like a fluidity and maybe like even advocacy in like a third dimension. And so everything can always turn from projects into business, or turn in from a project into like some kind of advocacy project. I mean, I've had nonprofits started off of things I'm interested in or become interested in with other people, as you've seen. And so it's a tough balance. Most of the time, that it's frustrating, especially early on for me, was when I wanted it more than the people around me. And I had to kind of suck it up and realize, it's just not going to happen until other people want it too. And I think that's like something that's hard for people to understand sometimes. I think it's often one of those things where people want it to happen because they see it, and sometimes they have an organization or a group that like wants to see it, but you know, it's a culmination of things. I mean, a lot of times we have a desire for our projects to take off, but it's not even whether our ideas are great. You know, it's a lot of times is, you know, who are you associated with when you're doing it? Who, you know, who are you reaching out to? And is it an earnestly good idea? You say, I'm struggling with side projects as I want to make a ton of random videos, but don't necessarily have a goal in mind. Well, welcome to Joey PhD's Helping Others. I mean, that's a catch-all umbrella. So if you go and you look at my actual channel that I'm streaming off of, you'll see like, you know, my projects really range. And so, you know, what I recommend for like you, Chris, Peter, is I know I've seen your content and I've seen how diverse and wide reaching it is. You know, I think it would be like something like Chris's Crazy Life with Chris, going crazy with Chris. I don't know, because you do art, you do like production and photography, and you also do a lot of videos with your kid. That's really interesting. I could see you having some side stuff with that once it gets going, but really at this point it's like you know, I think just make the content and figure it out. Put it all on one channel. Make the channel raw ominous. I mean, I can't remember the name of my channel. I think it was just like my handle. It was DayOJTL333 before I changed it a year and a half ago, last January, or last fall. No, like maybe it was 2 years. I don't know. It was a while ago. I changed my whole name. I took all my videos, because some of y'all may not know this, but I have about, I don't know, 300 videos on this YouTube channel. I unlisted all of them except for my Joey PhD content. And so they're all still out there. They all still work. But, you know, I have car videos. I have stop motion animation. I have talks. I have all kinds of stuff. But I wanted to take an existing channel that I had organically built up. So when I started my venture, I had about 400 and something subscribers already. I'm at 500 and something right now. But I wasn't creating it to necessarily gain notoriety. I was just creating it because, well, when I did my dissertation, well, I did my master's back in 2003 about personal multimedia production, about like creating media for yourself that you can share with others, which is basically what social media became right then and there and right after, and has continued to be. So it's no longer like really abstract or anything. And don't forget, you can ask questions. I'm just answering the question that's up there, but like you can keep asking questions and I'll answer any random question you'll have. So make sure to kind of throw that out there, that y'all like feel free to chat in the live chat and just say, hey, well, what about this? But I'm answering Chris's question right now. He goes, gotcha. I think I'm spreading myself too thin, trying to create 3 different channels to create niche channels, 2 are entertainment and 1 semi-professional. So yeah, so again, I just recommend like, you know, really just let the content happen first and then let the channels happen second. Did you see Justin Timberlake on Hot Ones today? No, I did not see JT, but I need to check that one out. I was just recommending the Gary V Hot Ones, which I've shown a lot of y'all in class and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, I think that a lot of times when you go to be creative, it's kind of daunting to think about how do you build a set of works that you can kind of show off and that have an authorship to it, meaning work that can be identified as you, even though it may not even be in the same genre or same medium. Also, when you watch it, let me know if you think this look reminds you of anyone. I'm feeling like it might be a haircut reference there. We'll see. But yeah, that's I've had that complex for a long time. Like back in 2007, I had this idea to document every single record store in Central Texas. So from Austin to San Marcos to New Braunfels to San Antonio, I went to every single record store and hit them all up. I asked them if I could, and I took photos. Back then, we weren't really doing too much video online and the way that we're doing it now. Now I would definitely have video. Yeah, I did photos, and I talked about each space and what they're like. And I maintained it for a good couple of years. I spent like $1,000 or more on records, so that was fun. So yeah, it's, you know, being creative is something where we often think that someone else is above us and someone else is below us, and they've done something that markedly makes them different. A lot of it is that people just keep going. A lot of times they kind of trudge through those moments where, like Chris is talking about, where you have so many ideas. How do you actually create clarity around them? And to me, it's like, what I think is, are you a reader / often do you read, including academic stuff? I'll answer that in just a second. Let me just finish this and I'll answer that. So normally, what I do with my own like creative content is I start sharing it with close people next to me. And I mean, Chris, you've even been a part of this. You were a part of my latest one for my SEMA article, which I'll put up. I recently just published a article, and I'm like not shopping it around, but I'm shopping it around in terms of feedback. So meaning that because I self-publish, I can make real-time changes to my work, and you'll be able to. That's not the link. That's just a link to this, and you'll let me refresh this. There we go. And a lot of times, what will happen is people will give me real-time feedback in the first 2 or 3 weeks of something being published, and I'll be able to make like really big changes to my work that just make them resonate better with people. Like I had my brother give me content feedback for this link I just sent out for my SEMA article, and you know, it made me think about, should I do an intro video for it? And it made me also delineate like the academia part. So, and Claire, in terms of my reading, yes, I'm a huge reader. I read all the time, but I don't read books too much, if at all, sometimes. When I was in graduate school, I read like 1,500 pages of theory per class for 5 years straight. And, you know, I had to read Marx and Foucault and Engels and Bourdieu and like all of these big theorists and academic practitioners, theorists, of practicers of the theory. And I don't know, I grew up in a really weird situation where I don't have a huge Western European dialect. I don't have a huge interest in reading things that aren't easy for me to read. And so a lot of times, I also found out I have ADD. So that like, as in like someone told me I had ADD, or like I'm not medically certified. Like I found out I have ADD, and I've had ADD since I was a kid, and my parents never told me. And I found out in November when they handed me some medical records, and I was going through them, and I was diagnosed with ADD, and they just never told me. And so that could also contribute to why I'm not a huge reader. But when I do read, it's kind of, I was taught to read by Sandy Stone, who was my mentor at UT Austin. And one of the things she did that like really helped me was, she said, you know, read this more like poetry. You don't need to read this to recite back to me word for word or to have memorized it. I want you to read it and kind of let it just wash over you. And she may have said this, I can't remember, but I know I definitely say it to my students, is that I want them to read over it like that, and then I just want them to see how it relates to their lives. So a lot of times I'm reading things and then I'm seeing how it relates to me, especially when it's academic. So I read, you know what? How I end up reading a lot of academic work is when I meet people, because I'm like a little social butterfly. When I meet people and I want to read their dissertations. I want to read their books that they've written. I had a colleague just come out with a book called Gender Blindness, Lucy Miller, and so I bought the book and read it in like 40 minutes. Because the other thing is I can speed read, which is really weird. But I have to have the opposite of my ADD. I have to have like this huge, intense like goal to like consume this thing. I don't know if any of y'all have that. Feel free to chime in. But it's very hard for me to sit down and read something that's not just gripping me, pulling me in. I listen to a lot of things. Reading gives me anxiety, to be honest with you. It's hard for me because I want to get through it. And the other thing that I always had a problem with when I was a kid was that I would have friends that are reading books. I mean, I had a really close friend in 4th grade, and she would sneak read. She would like have her book underneath the desk, and we'd be in class, and she would be like looking down and sneak reading, and I'm over here like just coloring, doing stuff. And she was like reading about the Holocaust and like just really intense, deep stuff. And I always just felt like not inferior in the sense that I felt inferior, but I always felt anxiety and kind of like, yeah, that's just not me. I mean, I just can't do that. I don't have that obsession. And a lot of my friends that are what I would consider geniuses, I mean, they all read. They all consume text like nobody's business. I mean, when I hung out with a lot of geeks and hackers, I mean, they were reading Neil Stevens and William Gibson, and like, knew all of the cyberpunk literature. And I was just like learning from them, and then watching Ghost of the Shell, The Matrix, and Hackers. And like, I was a huge visual audio learner. And so it was, reading for me has always been a very difficult thing. And then writing, if y'all haven't figured that out, writing is super hard for me, and was something that even when I was in graduate school, I was still being sent to the undergraduate writing center to learn how to write correctly because I wasn't a good writer. Finally, I mean, that was kind of simple. I did figure out how to be a good writer, which was that I just wrote 5-paragraph essays that were like 20 pages long. And they were like, this is good and nice and concise and consumable. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But I always just wanted to write like stream of consciousness, like all over the place. And that made people have to work and read. But that's how I felt when I read Foucault, or when I read Bourdieu, or when I read like, other theorists, especially a lot of postmodern theorists. I just felt like they were that way. And so I didn't see why me being that way was such a big deal. But yeah, so that's my little part about reading. Is there another question? Y'all have any other questions? Feel free to post up. I'm outside and it's like 90 degrees. So I brought like all these fluids with me so I could just keep drinking, and I brought fruit because I thought, I don't know, I thought it'd be more comfortable that way. And so far I've been like 100% correct. Like this has been totally better than without fluids and things to snack on. For those of y'all that just checked in, I'm sorry I had to change the link. What happened is that I forgot that to do a webcam stream is different than to do a streaming stream. And so since I'm using my webcam, I had to make a new URL. So I apologize for anybody that didn't see that right away. Anyways, so the other thing about reading that's interesting to me is that like I do have like certain texts that throughout my life I read over and over again, and there's only like 10, maybe 20 that I've regularly read, and really that's turned into podcasts at this point. Says, did you see the article by the local California news station that proposed a hypothesis that COVID may have reached California early, which could have been accounting for their lower infection rate in New York? Interesting. So with the COVID comment here, that's really interesting. I have not read that. But I've been reading just in general. So I want to preface when I talk about COVID, this is April 9th at 3:23. This is the news I have right now. It's constantly changing. So let's not take anything I say as fact as much as like observation. So in terms of what you're saying, I have noticed articles being posted, whether it's about California or the U.S. in general. A lot of people are trying to throw out there the idea that COVID may have been here sooner than we had originally thought. And I think with big issues like we're going through right now, it's one of those things where it's going to be like hindsight is 2020. We're going to be able to look back and see whether or not we were right or wrong about what we were saying at the time, much like we do with World War II and what we do with the Vietnam War. And, sadly, which we haven't done as much with the Gulf War and with the wars that have preceded in the Middle East. I mean, they've been going on for close to 30 years now. And we just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I guess some people might be 30 years. I'm like, well, I'm going back to 1990s, but really, I guess since 2001, 2003. But we've always had that presence there, and we don't have that reflection yet. And I think that's a little unhealthy for our society. But yeah, in terms of the hypothesis that's coming out, I could see how people were kind of saying that. Chris says, sideline back to SEMA article. I think an intro interview is a good idea, might help with different audiences, what this is, what you'll get out of it. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to say, like, hey, if you're reading it from an academic standpoint, what I suggest is looking at photos, looking at the semantics of anything that's written in there for the videos, and then same thing for all the text, and then following out all the links. Like that to me is like a full PhD kind of read. And then like the casual read to me, which is one that I do a lot, is like, you scroll through and you're like, oh, photo, oh, that's interesting. Oh, there's some bullet points. Let me look at that. Oh, okay, cool, I'm done. And you're like, all right. And like, honestly, it does not bother me whether you do that second, the first part or the second part. It doesn't hurt my feelings. That's why I made it that way. And I think I should, if I just had that last 30 seconds in an intro, I think you're right, Chris, that would probably go a long way. I think sometimes people think I expect them to read everything and look at everything that I post, which is just unreasonable. As someone who has studied media, what are some ways to be in touch with important news while not feeling overwhelmed? And what are some places to consume news that are decent? Woo! That is $1 million question, or $1 billion, or $1 trillion question. That's a great question. And I'll say it's a great question because we don't have great answers at this time. We don't. I mean, we don't have what I would call trustworthy news at this point. One of the things that I think makes the U.S. unique specifically is that we're not a state-run media institution, but through campaign finance and through a lot of political prowess, our private sector does have a huge influence on government. And so I've always found it very hard to delineate between national parties and television stations for the past 10 years and then really for the past 20 years. I think we definitely have like these not only divided sources of information in the news, but we have divided politicians and their sources for information, which is often the news. I had a hold on one second. I had a friend on Facebook post up a Tucker Carlson interview, and he was quoting a clip that was from the WHO, a World Health Organization, from the director, and he was really upset about the quote. And I said, look, like, I think you're taking this out of context because of how For those that don't know, I have a hard time saying R's sometimes. Speech therapy for 5 years for it. So Tucker, there we go, Carlson, 2 R's there, is that I think he wrapped that quote very nicely to instill fear, which I think both Fox News and CNN and most news, cable news television shows are great at. That's what we've become accustomed to, and then that proceeds online with the various sects that we read online that are news agencies. And so you have it on both the left and the right. So it makes it very hard for us to sit here and say this is a trusted source and this is not. I've had it with the Washington Post. Like the Washington Post upset me because I watched this documentary called The United States of Secrets. Sounds like a huge conspiratorial, like fringe Alex Jones style documentary, but it's actually produced by Frontline. And Frontline is a PBS documentary TV series that's been around for decades. I mean, they've done stuff on advertising and on just all these different topics, health topics. And so it was really interesting to see them do a piece on domestic surveillance, like government domestic surveillance. And one of the things you find out is that in the movie, or in the TV series, the Washington Post had found out about domestic surveillance and then withheld it for a year because the government asked them to. And let me get a link to that for you also. The United States. I have a lot of my classes watch it too. Secrets, PD, Frontline. And here we go, found it. Let me get you all the link before I forget. Because I'll just keep chatting away, and then next thing you know. And so I watched that, and even if you just watch that, you kind of start seeing like these are person accounts from first tier, what I would call interviews, meaning that they're not talking, well, the Attorney General had said this, or said, it's like the Attorney General at the time is saying this, like in the interview. It is the Attorney General, and they're admitting to what was going on. And so, yeah, it just makes it that much harder for one to kind of have confidence in the media. And I think that's one of the hardest things I've had as a college professor, is that a lot of times people assume that I have a huge faith in our systems of information, and I don't. You know, I think that they're all highly subjective. I've thought that since I was 18 years old. I was telling one of my colleagues, you know, in my first government class, there's 400 people, and I was this naive Republican at the time that was sitting in the back of class, and I had this professor back in 1999. I had this professor hold up the New York Times and was like, "This is fact. This is what you will get your news from. You will have a New York Times subscription, and this is how we will talk about the government." And I raised my hand. I'm sitting all the way in the back, and the professor like walks all the way back with the mic, and she like puts the mic up to me, and I'm like, "What about those ads? What about those ads next to those stories?" And everyone was like, "Whoa! Like, why would you say that to the professor?" And I was like, "Well, I can't different. Like, I think y'all, a lot of y'all know I own a hi-fi store, and I run a hi-fi shop, and so I'm like a capitalist and like a socialist and like everything in between." And I was sitting there going like, you can't have people giving money and not having something be exchanged beyond just economic capital. There's social and cultural capital that also is exchanged in those situations. And so so she kind of looked at me, and we ended up collaborating, and then she ended up having a problem with me, which was that she thought I had like not done work, and actually had. So that's a whole nother story for another time, unless you want to follow up with a question on that. But you're asking for decent sources. So there are a couple of things I would recommend, especially in this COVID time. One, create a network of friends. Create a network of friends who read the news, okay? I think that's really important in this time, is to not just read all the news yourself, but to create a network of friends that read the news and that have differing views that you have. So I have like hardcore Republican friends. I have hardcore left friends. I have, people that just are all over. And to me, that really helps me really start kind of more of a rounded perspective. One of the things someone was asking me, like, well, so you're a centrist, like, how do you even consider? I'm like, well, I say I'm a centrist, but really I'm just Joey. And I think that I have like weird views. I'm kind of like, if I were to describe myself, which I'm not either of these things, an AR-15 owning vegan or something like that. It's like I am something that doesn't exist in nature except that I exist. And then there's going to be people that are going to give you links to all these fringe AR-15 vegans. But because the reality is that there are usually tens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of what we consider fringe people. So when I'm trying to create the news, my understanding and opinion about the news, first thing I do is I have a trusted network of people. So I have currently have 3 main chats on my phone, text messaging chats, that are with various groups of friends, and we keep each other abreast about things that are going on. Also, for people that just signed on, you can just ask a question and I will answer it. Just go up on there, ask away, and we'll be doing it. And so aside from that, then what I do is I don't have cable television, so that's out off the books. But I do, I read a lot online when y'all are asking me. So I read articles. If someone posts up even like a CNN article, it's like supposed to be a story you watch, I just read all the text first. And then if I even want to, I'll go and watch the video. If I'm like, oh, I want to hear this quote, or oh, I want to see, the tone in which they said. Because the other thing is, whenever I'm watching like a video clip, I'm looking at nonverbal, I'm looking at the semiotics, I'm looking at the semantics of what they say. I'm trying to understand beyond just the quote at that point, right? I'm trying to give it contextualization and see what's happening. Like that Who example where my friend was critiquing the Who, and I was like, no, you're really critiquing Tucker Carlson, you just don't know it. And my friend went back and forth with me about it for a while, and I finally, it was like 6 hours later, and I got like 6 different likes of what I had said. And they were like, no, like, you're not crazy. And because you kind of feel crazy sometimes if you start having these ideas and nobody backs you up, you kind of think, well, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I don't have that kind of grasp on what's happening. So, I really recommend, if you're trying to figure out what the news is, to look at a lot of different spaces. Now, me specifically, I look at CNN. I look at Fox News. I look at the BBC, Washington Post, New York Times, any kind of local agencies. For San Antonio, I'm on a lot of Facebook groups. So a lot of local Facebook groups, a lot of, and when I say local Facebook groups, I mean like people that are posting up local stories. So I'm also subscribed to like all the Facebook pages for the local publications, and I'm trying to look at different views. Like one of the big issues in our city right now is public transportation, and so like I follow that. I follow the homeless epidemic that's taking place across the U.S., and I look at it specifically in San Antonio and how it's being handled here. I look at inequities. So I look at the difference between people who have things and who don't, and then also how society as a whole is trying to make an effort to close those gaps. Excuse me. So, I really am like trying to be as engaged as possible as I go through this this news gathering, and then again, I'm finding things and I'm sending them. So the other thing I do is I read a lot online, but I listen a lot. I mean, I listen to a ton of podcasts. One I'm listening to right now, somewhat moderately, is this guy named Rich Roll. It's a YouTube channel. I recently watched. I love challenging myself to listen to something that is very personal to me, but that I also have to figure out. And And so recently, Rich Roll, who it's literally Rich Roll on YouTube, posted a interview with these two gentlemen that are talking about carbs and diabetes, and they do a fruit-based diet and are making all these assertions. And so to me, like, this is a great example. I put it in the chat. This is a great example of a video to watch, and you have to decipher, like, these guys are flying in the face of what everybody else is saying. They have both anecdotal and they have quantitative research, peer-reviewed works that they're asserting validate what they're trying to say. And at the same time, like, if you know anything about diabetes, you're kind of going like, yeah, but. And so how do we construct our own reality? How do we, like, this is a kind of, if this is the situation, if my fist, like, here is the situation, the way I'm always trying to assess it is that it's like I'm trying to see it from this point and from this point and from this point and from that point. And the reason I say the diabetes was hard for me is because I have type 2 diabetes, and I'm overweight. I'm a big guy. I'm a big person. Eating is my biggest problem. And so when I sit there and I look at watching this stuff, it's not just like, oh, I can just talk. It's like I have emotional reaction. I'm like, oh, I feel self-conscious. I feel this, I feel that. And a lot of times to me, that can be translated to like any kind of news we're consuming. Should we be wearing a mask? Going back to COVID, how much distance should we be maintaining? Should we be going to the store? Those kinds of things. They may sound minor right now to some people, and they may be like really big anxiety-inducing topics to others. And so your question about about gathering the news is a great one, because it can be overwhelming, and a lot of times it can catch us off guard. We'll be reading something and someone will be like, hey, blah blah blah, and you're like, what? And you're like, and they're like, like, I don't know. You're like, oh, I was just reading something, and it's not. It may even I was just listening to that podcast about diabetes, and oh, are your blood sugars okay? Or you're like, yeah, I'm totally fine. I got wrapped up into it, and I'm trying to figure out, no, they're wrong, or yes, they're right. And so no, that's a great question. So Chris Peter asked, what is your opinion about engaging with political arguments, quote, discussions on social media? Is it our duty to know what is going on and discuss with others? I tend to be passive with others in that realm. That's a great question. So I look at it as like, I look at those discussions as like dessert or ice cream or something like that. I was just talking about health. But I look at it as like dessert, something on a day where you burned all these calories and you kind of earned the bandwidth to put up with yourself. I think because it's usually ego on your part if you're going to engage, whether you realize it or not. I mean, I think it is. And so you have to sit there and say, am I going to engage on this? Because most of the time, people aren't looking to be rebutted. They're looking to just be heard. And so a lot of times people are saying things and talking past each other. I do that all the time too. I'm not being like, I'm not saying this as like, I don't do that, but like I've done that before. But I think that online, I was talking about economic and social and cultural capital. I think you have friends, and you all know them. You can just assert and say things and go. Like, I had one just, I think, the other day before. I, quote, went at it with someone. Actually, no, wait, I just talked about it. It was about the Tucker Carlson. And I said all of these things, and the original poster just kind of kept going back and forth with me, like I said, and the person came back, and a lot of other people had agreed with me, but I have a lot of respect for that person, and that's why I was really decided to engage, because I mean, that person has always seemed like, I don't know, a huge Bernie Sanders fan or something like that. And I was like, why are you, what it was is that, the WHO guy was saying the government, I'm not going to use the exact quote, because I don't remember it, and I'm not going to go look it up because I don't want to do that right now. But basically, he was saying that as people get COVID and it's being reduced, you may start seeing that it spreads the most within a household. And so sometimes we may need to isolate someone in the household in order for us to reduce the chances of more infection. And Tucker Carlson construed it as the military is going to come in and forcefully take you out of your house so that other people can't get infected. And he didn't even say that part. And so it was kind of like adding hysteria and stuff like that. And so a lot, oh man, got a cramp in my leg. Sorry about that. So a lot of middle-class people construed that as like a violation of their rights. And so I understand that. I understand people getting scared, but that's already possible in a lot of other different situations, such as someone needing to be ED'd, emergency detention, if they're suicidal, and having them taken against their will, which I've done before for someone, and they've thanked me for it. If it's good intention. Now, if the government's acting up and is doing things they shouldn't be doing, well, yeah, of course, that's wrong. But having that conversation go back and forth with this guy, we totally civilly did. He even contacted me and side chatted me, and we had a great conversation and talked through what I just mentioned about like other situations where you can get taken without consenting necessarily to it. And but one of his friends, came on the chat, and then it was all of a sudden like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, and you say you're a PhD, and you're just using that as an authority, and blah blah blah. And it was weird to see my friend that started the chat go like, this guy's my friend, and like I know him, and he's not doing that. And I was like, oh, cool, like this, I don't even have to rebut that guy. Like, so yeah, so sometimes you're on a channel like that, and then sometimes, you're just going to keep going back and forth. I've blocked people that just keep posting stuff that I don't agree with at a fundamental level. Like most of the people that I have that with are either extremely left or extremely right. People that are like, F the police. I'm like, dude, I'm not that person. Like, one of my closest friends is law enforcement, and one of my best students was shot and killed by a police officer. But I don't think F the police is the solution to bringing people together. Does that make sense? And so it's like a lot of the times when I personally am engaging with people know my personality about that. Or I've done enough stuff online that I can send them a link and look like, hey, look, this is my lived reality. This is what I've gone through. I hope you find value in that. So, but it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. James, you're in my if you're still there, you're in my popular culture class. It's 135 students, and you see me talk both ends and dance literally to make sure that I tote that line of making people understand that I'm not here to say one way is better than the other as much as to get you all to, again, like, take this and look at it. Not that we're trying to brand anything here. There we go. Take this and look at it from different perspectives and say what it is. And it's a process. But if I wasn't paid to do it as a teacher, I don't think I'd be going around on the streets trying to convince people otherwise all the time. But I think that's a great question, Chris, because that was a question that I had coming into January with the runoffs and everything and the election. And it was something that as I went to go teach this large lecture class, because those that don't know me, I teach usually like 30 to, really like 15 to 30 students at a time. I've never taught large lecture. I didn't know how it was going to go because you can see I have a rhythm to the way I talk. I engage people in a really personal way, and I try and let people have as much agency as possible. And sometimes that can be off-putting to people. And so I try, even with them, I'm trying to figure it out and hoping you don't fall asleep. But that class is at 8 a.m., so I have people in the front row that are like attentive that even still fall asleep because it's early. Word, find it can be better to discuss in person and do it when the right opportunity presents itself. Yeah, that's a really good point. That said, like we can't do that right now. It's COVID. We've got to engage online. And so, one of the things I recommend, I guess like my solution to engaging with people online is just being honest and being like, hey, I'm sharing my opinion. I want to be clear, this is my opinion. You have your opinion, I have my opinion. All I'm saying is this: we don't have to agree, but that's just what I think. And a lot of times that has worked for me. That's disarmed people pretty well, because I'm not trying to change minds in an outright way. I'm just trying to break down objections, be honest with people, and logically work through things. And sometimes I'm not completely logical about it, and sometimes they're not. It just depends. But we're very abstracted. The other thing I've learned to do, Chris, is if I do a video response, it's more personable. So sometimes on an issue, instead of typing something out, I'll do like a video. I'll get my phone here and I'll do like a little video response. I'll be like, hey, I saw those. I just wanted to say X about X, and I think this, and it's a tough situation, or it's a tough decision, or this or that. But I just wanted to share my thoughts. And a lot of times that will also help people kind of feel a little bit more empowered, and a little bit less like you're trying to be a condescending asshole. And you really are just trying to engage and understand. All right, so Chris says, last question, personal car question. Curious if you have any thoughts on these vehicles. Oh, man. All right, we're shifting gears. It says, looking at buying a $15,000 2008 Mazda MX-3 or a $17,000 electric 2017 BWI with range extender. For off the bat, I don't know enough about either car to make definitive statements, but I will give you my gut reaction. One, previous MX-3s have been decent. It's a decent car. It's not the best car. I think you're asking me a car question. The answer is one of two things, for those that don't know this about me. It's Toyota or Lexus. You hear that? Toyota or Lexus. There's no other car brands in my fleet. There haven't been in a long time. The only other cars that I've owned that I've been pretty satisfied with is I had a Honda S2000, which is a sports coupe, and I had a Honda Civic Si, which is a four-door sports coupe, or sports sedan, sorry. But other than that, like I really kind of do Toyota or Lexus. So I recommend, in that price range, I recommend a really well-used 4Runner, a Lexus GX 460 or 470 like I have. If you want good gas mileage, I recommend a Lexus RX 450H. And that would be a hybrid. And so it's a hybrid sedan. It'll get about 20 to 30 miles per gallon. It actually gets better gas mileage when you're driving in town. And so that's really cool because, like, I know you're not a huge highway driver like I am. And so when you're in town, you get better gas mileage. Tamika, why only Toyota or Lexus? Because they make, in my opinion, they make the best cars. I've owned BMW. I've had, a whole slew of different cars. And for those that don't know, I did my dissertation on online and offline automotive culture, specifically in Central Texas, but I also took it pretty much across the nation. And that's what my latest article that I posted up about at the beginning, and I'll share it again, or y'all can scroll up and see the article that I posted. And so I've embedded myself in the automotive scene, and I'll never forget, like, my first mechanic that I came to just love was this guy. His name's Lee, L-Y, Lee. That's what he told me to call him. He's this Vietnamese guy, worked in sandals in Austin. And I called him and I was like, I need my Ford Taurus work done. And he's like, no work on Ford, Toyota. And I'm like, okay, well, but I really need it work done. And he was just real hesitant. Finally, he was like, okay. So I get it fixed, keeps breaking down. I sell it. I end up getting this crazy car that everybody knows me for. It's called the Mercury Grand Marquis. Made like 500 horsepower by the time I was done with it. But the moral of the story is, he only worked on Toyota, and I was always wondering, like, why only Toyota? And finally, I started doing research, and if you look up like a Toyota Corolla, they can go 300 to 500,000 miles. If you look up like pretty much any Toyota, they can go like 300 to 500,000 miles. I have a 2008 Lexus GX 470 I just bought last July, and I paid $13,000 for it. It had 140,000 miles on it. I have 168,000 miles on it now. So yeah, I put 28,000 miles on it in the last almost 10 months, well, I guess 9 months. And before that car, a landscape architect sold me his beater car because I was really financially irresponsible when I was in my 20s. And then I lost my teaching job right before I started working at A&M. And so I just needed a car to literally get me by. So he sold me his it was a 2001, I think, 2000 Toyota 4Runner, and it had 440,000 miles on it. And I needed some work. I did some work with my dad. It was a lot of fun. And then I proceeded to put 16,000 miles on it in like 8 months. Again, just driving the crud out of it. And I sold it and got this car. And so all of my family is Toyota. My wife drives a 2015 RX 350 we bought for $24,000, used, certified pre-owned. It has a warranty and everything with it. And they just go. Now, the downside to Toyota, people are like, well, what's the downside? They drive like appliances. Okay, there's very little. If you're a car person and you're a sports enthusiast, this is not the car for you. You know, they're kind of lifeless. I have owned a Lexus ISF that my wife drove, and it had like 420 horsepower, and it's one of their sports cars. And it's fast. I mean, on the track, we got it up to like 165, 170. I mean, it was a really good, stable car, but it's not like a Porsche 911, which I'm a huge Porsche-phile. I love Porsches. I can't bring myself to own them because you really do spend $2,000 to $5,000 every year or two just kind of dealing with this or dealing with that, or having something that breaks that you spend $10,000 on. And so I don't know. And I find that with BMW and Mercedes and Nissan to a lot lesser extent Honda, Kia and Hyundai are also two brands that are kind of there with Nissan that, you know, they've really improved. But to me, Toyota is like the epitome of it. For those that don't know, if you get a Toyota 4Runner or you get a Land Cruiser or cars like that, they tend to be built to last like 10 or more years easily. So anyways, and then in terms of the American cars, I can't get into them. Yeah, so that answers that question. Chris is saying, yeah, mainly using 4Runner as a commuter. It is loud and not smooth, but reliable and durable. Yeah. So yeah, that kind of ends those questions. Any other last questions? We've got like a couple more minutes. Anybody? Well, last thing I'll talk about then is, you know, as we go through this COVID situation, you know, just make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you take care of other people. I really believe in helping other people. I've been working very hard to make sure that the people around me have what they need, and I think about them emotionally. I think about them physically. I think about their occupation. You know, because it's not easy. Like, a lot of us are having to live our lives in newfound ways. Like, maybe it's being with your parents and that's your house now. All of a sudden you were used to all this independence, or maybe it's you're that parent and all of a sudden you've got these kids there all the time. And, you know, maybe it's that you were used to having like physical space to roam around and do things, and now it's like you're in a little confined space. Is that life ending for us? No. The COVID itself is what's really scary for us, but it doesn't mean that this isn't difficult or hard. I mean, it's so easy to say, well, just suck it up and work hard, and I keep giving myself Charlie horses, and you'll be okay. And to me, like, okay, cool, like that's a great attitude. But you know what? Like, we still all have feelings, and we still all go through things. And so, if you have ways to cope with it, I think that's okay. It's okay to talk about how you're coping with it and what you're doing. I mean, if you follow me on Instagram at Joey Hi-Fi, you'll see that I'm posting up about how I exercise and I work out, and I power wash, and I have all these different activities I'm doing to like help myself cope with the amounts of anxiety that I'm experiencing, in addition to taking medication. So this is a very real thing that we're going through. And it's not something that's necessarily easy, and it's uncharted as well. Curious if anyone else is struggling with their parents inviting them over, but having to tell them no because of COVID. They think I am being paranoid. Yeah, my family is offended. I won't hug them, and my mom works in a hospital. Yeah. So again, like this is a really big thing I'm seeing happen for people is that the social norms in your family. Like before COVID, I saw my family who lives down in San Antonio, and I lived up in BCS. I saw them every weekend, and my son would stay over at my sister's, and we have, we eat breakfast together. We see each other constantly. My siblings all live here in town. They would see each other and hang out, and my parents was like a social hub. And then my mom's family would come and see her and come and hang out. And so having this all happen, it really kind of like was like a domino effect. And there's still some dominoes that aren't fallen over yet. Like I'm riding past an HEB every day, and I'll ride like at 7 a.m. And I'm not planning to do this, but it's just like happening. And I've had it happen probably like 6 times since I've been writing. I'll see the line out in front of HEB, and again, I'm an anthropologist. I put my little hat on, and I'm like watching what's going on, and you see this line, and you can tell like who's feeling what by how much distance they're keeping, whether they have gloves on, whether they have a mask on, like how serious they are about this. And then if any of y'all have gone to a store, I went to a store about 2 weeks ago, and then before that, and I wore like my N95 mask and my gloves. And it's like I walk into the store last week to get like eggs and some milk and stuff, and there were like these really healthy, way more fit than me kind of people, like in yoga pants and stuff. And I'm looking at them like, oh my gosh, like, y'all are crazy, like y'all don't have any gear on, like y'all aren't keeping social distance. But I don't know what to tell you. I'm trying to do my part. I'm trying to make sure that I don't transmit it by having this mask on. And it was pretty shocking. And so it's really tough family wise to get that across. Now, my immediate family have, I don't know, that's one of the chats actually that I'm referring to. And I realize that's I'm really fortunate to have siblings and parents that right away understood it. My sister's a pharmacist. I think that helped. One of my brothers works in oil, and then the other one works for the DOD. And I think everybody kind of secretly is super type A, and I think our family sometimes is OSHA certified or something, because everybody understood wearing masks and taking as many precautions as possible really, really quite fast. Even my dad, I was worried he was just going to keep going out to the store. I mean, I had other friends that were like you, that were just like their parents are going out to the store. And to me, that was because they were trying to create normalcy. They're trying to feel like it's an emotional response to the situation. They want things to be normal. That's what makes the anxiety lower, and be like, see, we can still do this. We can still do that. We can still go out to the store. Well, the answer is that we can't right now. It's we should try not to. And people, the American way, like we don't say can't. work harder, you know, get to that job. And so it's kind of it's tough when your family wants to engage that way, and you have to tell them no. But we've worked through it, my family. But yeah, as for your own families that are giving you a hard time, you know, I'll tell you this: if at your gut is giving you anxiety and you wish you could be wearing a mask around them, or you wish you could be doing this, just do it. Let them be offended, okay? Well, because in order for you to help other people, which is the name of my channel, you have to help yourself first, and you have to feel okay. You know, it's why they always say in the airplane, right? Put the mask on you and then on the kid. Because if you get the mask on you, if you get the mask on you, you know you can put the mask on your kid. But if you go to put the mask on the kid and you pass out, well, then you can't help the kid. You got to be able to take care of yourself. So, you know, make sure that you take care of yourself so that you can keep helping other people. So I'll leave it at that. I hope you all enjoyed this. I will do another one next week. And I hope y'all are having a great day. I will keep my asynchronous check-ins going. I have another channel that I've been doing them on for academic people. So I'll go ahead and that up. I'll put it in here, and then you can check that out. So that's Professor Joey is that one, and I'll put the link up. And this is where I have like my check-ins that are on Facebook. I do check-ins on Facebook for those that are friends with me. But if you're not a friend with me on Facebook, I have these check-ins that I'm also doing, and some tutorials and things like that. So, all right, y'all take it easy and have a great day.